So this video is going to have some flashing lights and sound, and just, I'm going to try to cut with, I have After Effects. I'm going to attempt to cut here in like, say, 10 seconds, uh, what I'm going to show you that I built, and then I'm going to come back and explain some of the parts. But we're going to see if I can cut that here. Okay, welcome back. So let's talk about Kyle's video for a moment. So Kyle built a fast Fourier transform visualizer, but first start out with a good story about what it's like to keep up in this unique moment. Um, I'm going to come back to that story because I think it is a really good one. And in fact, I encourage you to watch the video, if anything else, just to hear some of the stories that Kyle shares because they're actually pretty interesting. But we're in this unique moment where it's it's all anyone can do to keep up with AI. And in fact, if you open a Twitter/X today, I'm sure that there's going to be 1,000 new AI things that are mind-bendingly just twist your brain in new ways of like, oh my gosh, there's all this amazing stuff. Um, but Kyle had built this fast Fourier transform. I'll click play now. So when when he built this, as you can see, he started out with I probably can't see my mouse cursor. We started out with just like a basic kind of visualizer. And then he started stepping it up and added in like a brush texture. And he started like with some dials. And effectively, he built a virtual replica of a $8,500 block of hardware. And I was like, wow, that's super cool. And I really love that brush texture. And because it reminds me of the like Star Wars environment for me, right? I'm not like I know enough about music to be dangerous, right? Like I can go into a music store and pick up an instrument and generally like know how to cause trouble. Um, but when it comes to like all the ins and outs of like music space and whatnot, like I don't know a whole lot. And it was such a cool idea that I was like, wow, it kind of reminds me of like the Astromech metallic berm that you see on like the Star Wars movies, right? Where it's this kind of metallic feel, and they've got all the knobs and the dials. And I thought to myself, like, oh, it'd be really cool to do something with that. And then as it happened on Saturday, I had this idea while I was drinking the world's largest margarita that, gosh, what if it were like like an astromech splicer type of thing where you have this interface and maybe it's like the interface to an astromech of some sort. Like, could I pull that off or like what would happen there? And just as a spoiler, I didn't quite get there. But I did get to a very interesting place, and I'm going to walk through kind of some of the process that I used to build this. As you can see on the video, like we've now got to the metallic sheet and got some of the dials. It looks just like an actual unit. And I have no doubt that it's like if I were to go look at the physical version of what Kyle's talking about here, it would look exactly like that. Now, when I get to building this thing, I flipped over now to Evan's video in this competition that we're doing, this Spring into AI competition, which is really a way for us to collectively learn. Because I had this theory, and so far it seems to be playing out. But got a few more weeks. We'll see, and then I'll come back with a recap. But what Evan had done is he had taken a combined workflow of taking both GitHub Copilot and then also Codex, and then combining them in interesting ways to build out his project, and also in a way that would be support like multiple operating systems, right? That was kind of his take on the project and how it would work. And I was like, huh, that's also very interesting. So when I got back home, I actually ended up forking Kyle's project into something I call a splicer panel. So splicer panel, which I haven't pushed the code up, I'm gonna do that here in a moment. Uh, in order to build what I think is like a really interesting take on this spectrum analyzer. And I'm going to walk through first, like let's walk through what it can do because it's just kind of interesting to me. So I will need to reshare this new view. here. Okay, so this Astromech slice panel does not have the cool metallic texture that I wanted to have. However, I ended up in kind of an interesting spot. Like I just kind of kept going with it today. And mind you, like this was built in less than 24 hours. So it's not perfect, but it's strangely compelling in its own way. And what there's some actually mind-blowing components about this because of something Kyle had made reference to in his video, which is that, hey, there's a bunch of audio features that are now available just in the browser that were not there, what, 5, 10 years ago, maybe. And it's a lot of capability that before I would have probably just offloaded to the server to do something. But in this case, I thought, well, let's try just doing everything in the browser with HTML and just pure JavaScript. How far can we go? Turns out you can go ridiculously far. Okay, so we have this audio loading, which is this is all generated by AI, of course. Everything in this competition is. But as everything kind of clicks in here as it's loading, kind of see the panels expand. I didn't add like a cool visual effect between things loading. I thought about adding like some cool pops. I ended up doing that on a different section of this little demo that I'm going to walk through. But there's still a lot of really neat places. One thing you probably won't be able to hear, but there, when you adjust the dials on this component down here called Signal EQ, it makes a little click sound. And that was a little subtle detail because I wanted something where it was like when you click over, you could hear that little mechanical click, like it's latching into place. And then, of course, we've got the actual waveform. It's got a spectrogram. We've got a band heat map. I'm gonna click play, and I'm pretty sure the audio won't come through, but you can see how it's like playing through the audio, and then we can adjust, of course, the bands, mid, which this is bonkers to me. I can't even tell you if I would have been able to write this from scratch. I don't think so. Not within a year. I probably would have spent an entire year just trying to figure this out. Um, and I'm sure you saw the inch spectrogram. So probably what I'll do is I have a live version of this as well. So if you click on live, click here. I gotta click to choose a file, pull that up. Now, what's really cool about this is that it has a curtain and it like reveals out the whole space. And this is just really neat. I'll do a full screen so, and then I'll cut that into the end of the video. Oops, let me pause that for a minute. So then I'll cut that into the end of the video so you can just watch it play out for this track. So there are two tracks that are being the source. You can use them for whatever. I just use Suno to generate them. If you do use them, great. Like, let me know where you ended up using them at. There's a panel view that'll take you back here into the panel view. So all this is just raw HTML JavaScript, which is absolutely bonkers to me. So let's talk a little bit about the code and like the construction process. And I want to come back to this idea that I started out with, which is this concept of metas that I want to talk about because I think it's really interesting. But first, let's talk about some code. So actually, if we am I sharing my make sure I'm actually sharing the right window here. Yeah, cool. Um, so you can see I branched yesterday around 4 and built out some things since then, and then have built out this. Oh, well, I haven't built out anything. I used an interesting process though, and I want to talk about the process about how I actually did this. So you see that there's a structure panel here. We've got assets, audio, CSS, JavaScript, a library, plans, and prompts. So the first thing I did was I actually went in and had this initial planning prompt. Um, and it was, hey, I'm not going to read all the details about prompt you can find in GitHub, but the concept was I had chat use the GitHub and just a raw idea that I had, like turn that into like a prompt that maybe I can turn over to Claude to like build out something more interesting. And then I realized along the way, like, I don't want to do React. As I mentioned at the start, I was like, oh, well, maybe I call it the margarita constraint. It's like no React. We're just going to go in raw HTML, or HTML, CSS, JavaScript, no server-side stuff. This has to just run in a browser. So someone pulls it up. So we'll work on mobile, probably not real well, but it does work really great on a desktop, and it's just mind-blowing that it does it all. Um, I left in the originals, so maybe combine them in some new way if you're interested. You can see if you come into the slicer panel, though, it actually organized the code in a really fun way. And that's because I took this planning prompt. I used a plan to create a plan, right? So if you've ever been in corporate America, there's often like a pre-meeting to the meeting to before you have the other meeting, sometimes like a pre-meeting to a pre-meeting to a pre-meeting. Sometimes it's like excessively so, like you have different teams that have pre-meetings and just a conversation stack in order to get to an outcome. Um, but what that allowed me to do was to create a really nice set of plans here. So I've got this architecture overview, audio pipeline, state with this event bus, band heat map, descriptions. If you click into here, you can see the original plan and how everything was structured. Okay, so this was, I used Claude planning tool with my original prompt. We went through some cycles about how to construct a plan. I then had it write all the different plan files into this plans folder. Okay, so there's 13 of these things. And I started going through it and I was doing these one file at a time. And I was like, okay, this is going to take me forever if I have to manually assign these files one at a time to different agents. I don't have a tool for that right now. And I thought, well, what if I just had Claude write me a plan for Codex to just work through all these markdown files and I'll check on it in the morning, right? That was my plan. That was my plan. So that is the Codex implementation prompt. This thing is massive. It wrote a 626 line engineering prompt for Codex. I say it, Claude wrote that prompt for Codex. And just to recap, so I initially used ChatGPT with like the high level idea. It wrote out this initial planning prompt. I added a little tweak about a constraint, the margarita constraint. I then shared that with Claude to build, and we went through the planning cycle within Visual Studio, GitHub Copilot, right? Within GitHub Copilot, there's that planning feature. And, if you click on this, you can click on plan and go through a plan section. And then switching to agent mode, Claude then wrote out all these different more detailed plans about how the construction probably should work. When that was done, I came back and I asked Claude, I said, hey, I want like a detailed plan for OpenAI Codex. I want it to run until it's complete. It needs to go through all these different markdown files and just work through it all, right? And then I clicked the go button, and then I went to bed. After I kind of, like I said, I did a couple of initial agents and I saw that there was a site. It was kind of in place. I was like, we're going to click a button and just hope for the best and see what happens. I was stunned when I came up this morning. There was one bug I had to fix. And when I say I went to Claude and said, hey, can you fix this one problem? And then it just worked. I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So it's got a CSS. It's got all the CSS just in one giant file. We're not using any Webpack tools or anything, just CSS. It's got all the JavaScript nicely organized into purpose, which I really appreciate. It's got one library we pulled in for FFT. Again, the plans directory. Let's see what else. I added in this audio file so that I have some reference audio I can just upload and test, but I also want to make sure that you would have a chance to use it yourself. And then there's this worker section, which does, and this is just bonkers to me. Like it works with the FFT library and does all this amazing compute capability and all this math that I would, in the old world, the way I would have solved this is I would have went to the half price bookstore. I would have bought a few books on spectral analysis, maybe a physics book on sound or acoustics theory, and then I would have spent probably a weekend like just trying to map out the equations and then tying those to functions. Um, and in this new world, I went and had some cheesesteak burritos, really great margaritas, and then yeah, the next day this was largely done. That was kind of the gist of my evening. Uh, so I also watched a movie last night. I watched Heads of State with John Cena. Uh, and then, so, a date night. It was Valentine's Day. That's our date night. So, and then assets, of course, there's the brush metal texture, which I did not pull in like I wanted. So there's an opportunity for improvement there. But I've only had this going for 24 hours, so cut me a little slack. And then, of course, the live code, which has transitions. But the coolest part about live is that it has like this. This is just bananas to me. Like it has a curtains. Like it actually put the curtains in there. And I still have the chat up because I thought before I did this recording this morning, I would go, okay, hey, let's let's talk about where's that prompt at? Scroll up just a little bit. Hey, this is the extent of what I wrote. Quote, I'd like the live mode to start with a curtains reveal like a theater. Create a curtains component that comes down while the audio is processing and then reveals the stage with these effects it's processing. And that was it, right? So I didn't break it down into several different tasks or create like Jira stories or, if you use something like a Fogbugs or an AHA or a Kanban or whatever on GitHub or one of the other tools, I'm just asking for like what I want to see made real. And in this case, I wanted curtains. I wanted to reveal out, and then I wanted to see like all these different visual effects pop into the beat, right? So there's a beat mapping algorithm actually baked into this thing as well. And the reason for that is because when you come back to the live view, which I will pull that back up here, and let me reload a file real quick, then I'll show it. Let's see, you switch back to that. Let's see, which one is that? I think it's this one. Here we go. So in this view, we have all these different panels, right? There's actually an expand collapse down here that you can see. Um, oh, what's this drag to move option? What's all this? Did I do this? Is this part of, oh, that's part of the recording tools. Never mind. So um, you can see here it says tap beats and time or press play to start. I'm gonna see if I can't. I'll have to click play for that. I won't be able to do it, but effectively, I wanted something like a little mini game just kind of tucked inside of this at the same time. So just imagine this. You got all these visualizations. There's a hidden mini game. There's a live view with curtains that expand and reveal out like a full live view, all written in raw HTML and JavaScript. And you can just, do whatever you want with this kind of thing, right? Like, oh yeah, it's cool. I got a beat mapper in here. I can do toggles. There's like this really cool like Astromech sci-fi thing going on here. I probably should have added maybe like a little droid here at the top that's just going back and forth. That'd be kind of cool. But at this point, like I've already like what do they call that? Feature creep this thing to death, right? Like it's already got way too much in it. Um, but until I recorded this video, I haven't really looked at the code. And I think it just kind of shows the weird moment we're in where we can have an idea, run with it, built this cool thing. And you know, it could be kind of interesting on the live view, right? Show those curtains again. Those curtains are kind of cool. Here we go. It's going to analyze the signal, and then watch here in a moment where it actually pops out. So 3, 2, 1, curtain reveal, and then boom, it starts out. So we go back to code for a minute. So when you look at the code, you'll find this in a GitHub repo, and I'll put that in there as well, so you can download it. A lot of code is pretty straightforward, but you start asking questions like, do I care what the code looks like if at the end of the day it works? Or is it more like so long as it achieves the testable outcome, which is do the things on screen look like how I expect them to look? Yeah, I think so. I think that's a desirable outcome. For me, what gives me some confidence that the acoustic waveforms and whatnot are correct is because I have someone like Kyle who actually knows the industry and the space, and he built a device that simulates a real thing. And then what I did is I took that and then I just repurposed it for an astromech space sci-fi thing that I thought was kind of cool. That was the full extent of it. Um, okay, so let me shift gears one more time because I like doing these like little book reads at the same time of this. I think it's interesting. So there's this concept I found in this book. It's called Seeing Like a State. on medicine. I may have come across this before, but I don't think I appreciated it. I might have been younger and didn't really appreciate this idea of metis and like what it really means. And I think as you get older, you start realizing like, oh, there's different types of knowledge, different types of understanding, right? And for example, here in this quote that I have highlighted, metis is typically translated in English as quote cunning, end quote, or quote cunning intelligence, end quote. And then it goes on to say, well, not wrong. This translation fails to do justice to the range of knowledge and skills represented by metis. And a good example of this, I see it in sport, but you can see it in just riding a bike, right? So imagine for a moment you're riding a bike and you had to write down all the different instructions around riding a bicycle, right? Like how you like have to like correct just in micro movements where the handles are at, how you have to shift your hips just slightly to keep balance, where your feet need to be, and at different speeds, like how you need to adjust yourself. Now, could you write all those instructions down into a book and then could you comprehend it, right? Well, the answer is nobody does. How do you learn, right? You learn by doing. You get on a bike, you have someone with you go together to go do a thing, and then in the process, yeah, you might fall down or whatnot. You might get your skin scraped up or whatever. But you get back up, right? You're with someone, genuinely a parent, maybe a guardian or whatever. But you're gonna get back on the bike and you're going to continue going. And so in this world where we have all this technology changing so fast, this is where I think the only way that you're going to make sense of where this AI stuff is going and to develop the intuition required to have the kind of skills that are going to carry value in the marketplace is by doing. You need to sit down in groups like what we're doing with Spring into AI within your own group of friends, or can be with strangers, but I would encourage you to maybe just do it with a group of friends first. uh make sense of this stuff, right? What can you do? I mean, I just coded up a whole like sci-fi UI thing or uploads an audio based on music, by the way, that was generated by audio or by AI. That sounds great. And while I was watching a movie and having a date night with the wife, I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? There's a really good story about that really helps break down what metis also means, not just from a bicycle perspective. And I don't think, I think it's later in the book. Uh, and I can't really recommend this book unless you like are interested in statecraft or like how organizational structures work, which if you're it's a very thick read in some ways, but it was one of those books where sometimes you get to the end of the book and like the best part of the end of the book is the final page that's empty, and you're like, thank God I finished reading this book. Praise be, this book is over. This one was okay, and then it was towards the end that suddenly like it found its real value in this concept of medicine. I feel like the rest of the book I could just do away with, and I just wanted to know more about this concept of medicine, of this theory that there's so much understanding that we as humans have that just isn't articulated anywhere, right? And you see it with people who do a thing and then they work a thing and then they become experts at that thing. If you there's an example in this book about shipcraft. So if you are someone who's like a sailor or whatnot, you know a lot about the ocean, the tides, you know how the water breaks, you understand your boat. There's all these little details that's in the gap between what's written down and the theory and practice of the craft and what actually happens between you doing the thing. And today we don't have a way to really articulate that other than this concept of metis, which is not really real talked about. So I'm going to come upon another book somewhere that's going to talk about this concept more, but it is the best thing I've found to explain the gap between what AI can do and where you sit as a human being, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still going to need human hands to do something in this real world until the robots come, right? And then who knows, right? Nobody knows at that point. Maybe we'll just become part robots. Have no idea. But until then, I'm going to stop the share. We're going to maybe we're going to stop the share, stop share. Okay. So I am now going to use After Effects and try to cut from here at the end of the video. So this represents the end. And then I'm just going to like play out the live view of one of these tracks just so you can get a sense of how this stuff works. I think you'll find it interesting. So take care.